So, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining and tuning in. Obviously, if you look at the screen, we're going to talk about Third John tonight. So, Rye's with me. So, say hi to Rye, everybody. He is filling in to ask all of the really important, difficult questions.
Absolutely, because I know all the important questions.
So, and if you have questions, put them on the Facebook page or the YouTube channel if you can do that. If you can't, just use the handy dandy phone and send me a text, and we'll try to monitor that. In fact, let me turn that off so maybe it'll go to my watch. So, hey, we got our little screen thing on the screen back. But anyway, hey, thanks for joining in. And next week, by the way, we're going to start a new study called Good People Don't Go to Heaven. So, looking forward to that. And so I got to put my water down so I won't knock it off while we're doing a live stream.
Yeah, you both do that.
I'm assuming everybody can hear okay. I think I got the music turned off. Last week I didn't turn the music that was playing in the background off, so you couldn't hear me over the music. But grab a Bible. We're going to look at 3 John. Like always, we'll show the text on the screen as well. So I tell you what, first we will just read 3 John, and then we'll go back and talk about it a little bit. Got any questions about that?
No, not yet.
All right, cool. I got to get my notes here. Got my fancy notes. The elder, to my friend Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well. It gave me great joy to have some brothers come and tell about your faithfulness to the truth and how you continue to walk in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. Dear friend, you are faithful in what you are doing for the brothers, even though they are strangers to you. They have told the church about your love. You will do well to send them on their way in a manner worthy of God. It was for the sake of the name that they went out, receiving no help from the pagans. We ought therefore to show hospitality to such men, so that we may work together for the truth. I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first, will have nothing to do with us. So if I come, I will call attention to what he is doing, gossiping maliciously about us, and not satisfied with that, he refuses to welcome the brothers, and he also stops those who want to do so and puts them out of the church. Dear friend, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. Anyone who does what is good is from God, and anyone who does what is evil has not seen God. Demetrius is well spoken of by everyone, and even by the truth itself. We also speak well of him, and you know that our testimony is true. I have much to write to you, but I do not want to do so with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk face to face. Peace to you. The friends here send their greetings. Okay, so 3 John, short book, not a lot in there. I think this is very interesting. We also saw this in 2 John. 3 John is attributed to the Apostle John, but his name is not mentioned anywhere in the book. So it doesn't say from John. Church tradition says it's from John. So 2 John and 3 John are just written from the elder. So the question is John the elder? And personally, I think he is. And
feels like a weird title for him.
It does almost
Why would John be the elder?
Okay, we're going to talk about that. Why would John be the elder? A couple of the reasons that that we think John was the author of 2nd and 3rd John. One is church tradition, because church tradition has generally ascribed 2nd and 3rd John to the Apostle John. The 2nd and 3rd John are very, very similar in content. Mm-hmm. They both end with this phrase, I have much to write to you, but I do not want to do so with pen and ink. And I hope to see you soon, and we will talk face to face. So it seems like 2nd and 3rd John definitely are written by the same person. It's got that same closing phrase. But when you look at the content of 1st John, 2nd and 3rd John, there's a lot of similarity in content about walking with the truth and walking in the truth and faithfulness and faith. So it seems like the content is pretty close, enough that it looks like it's the same author. So Rye asked an interesting question, which is, why would John be called the elder? And that's one of the objections to John being the author, because it doesn't say the apostle. And I mean, Paul usually uses the apostle, and Peter uses it a lot too. There's this interesting quote. I want to show it to you if I can remember where it is. So this is a remark. I'm going to highlight this. It's a well-known remark made by Papias in the first part of the 2nd century. So he's really early. The thing is, we don't really have what Papias wrote in the 5 books, interpretations on the oracles of the Lord, but you got fragments of those books, and then you've got Eusebius in the 4th century who seems to quote and refer back to those books. Okay? Does that make sense?
So you got a guy quoting a book.
You got a guy who's quoting a book that was very early. So you got a guy in the 4th century quoting a book that was from the 2nd century, which was very early. And this is what he wrote right here. He says, and I shall not hesitate to append to the interpretations all that I ever learnt from the presbyters and remember well, for of their truth I am confident. But if ever anyone came who had followed the presbyters, okay, so the presbyter is the same word for elder, presbyteros. Okay, I should have told you that, right?
Right.
So presbyteros can be translated presbyter, or it can be translated, we translate it usually in our translations as an elder. Okay, so, but if anyone ever came who had followed the presbyters, I inquired into the words of the presbyters what Andrew or Peter or Philip or Thomas or James or John or Matthew or any of the other Lord's disciples has said, and what Aristion, who I have no idea who he is, and the presbyter John, the Lord's disciples, were saying. For I did not suppose that information from books would help me so much as the word of a living and surviving voice. So, Papias, as quoted by Eusebius, calls John an elder.
Very explicitly.
And
elder.
he also calls Andrew, Peter, Philip, Thomas, James, John, and Matthew presbyters. So he also calls them elders.
Well, he almost uses John's like a title.
He almost uses John. Yeah, you're right.
He uses the other ones like a descriptor, like they're the elders, but the presbyter, the elder John.
The elder John. So, looking at that, it doesn't seem that it would have been that unusual for John to address himself as an elder. And also, I actually don't think I pulled this one up. Let me show you one other thing. Let me duplicate this tab and go to first. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know what I did, but that was not right. So let me get rid of that and go back up here and go to 1 Peter. 1 Peter's interesting because Peter says, "To the elders among you, I appeal as a fellow elder, a witness of Christ's sufferings, and one who also share in the glory to be revealed." So Peter also calls himself as an elder. So in Acts, when you read the apostles and the elders, sometimes it's probably two distinct groups, and sometimes it's probably kind of an intermingled group.
Right.
So it wouldn't have been, what I'm saying in all of that is it would not have been way out of place for John to address himself as the elder, because it seems to have been a pretty common way to refer to them, although, in the New Testament writings, we're a little bit more comfortable, familiar maybe, with them saying the apostle. But John never refers it to himself that way. He just, in fact, even in the Gospel of John, and we do assume that John wrote the Gospel of John, he never mentions by name that he wrote the Gospel of John. He never puts his name on it. It's the one who Jesus loved. And so I think that is John, and other people that I really respect think that was Lazarus was the one who Jesus loved. But I think it was John. I think it was the Apostle John. So, and I don't think, I didn't look at this before class, I don't think he identifies himself in 1 John either. I don't think he, no, he doesn't identify himself in 1 John either. So John never really identifies himself as the author in the books.
So it would almost be in line for John to just not say his name.
Right. It would be more in line for John to write something like the elder, because he never really referenced himself in that way. I just think that's interesting. So I'm pretty sure that the elder is John, and I thought I had another slide here. So there are kind of some key individuals in the book of in 3rd John. So I thought we'd kind of talk with them. I also thought it's interesting. Let me go back to the text real quick. That he writes this to my dear friend Gaius, whom I love in the truth. And remember from last week, for those of you who were listening last week when we talked about that. So what John means by truth is the knowledge of what's consistent with the revelation of Jesus Christ coming in the flesh. So it's consistent with Jesus who came in the flesh and lived on the earth. It's consistent with his life, and it's consistent with the message that he gave. Because for John, that is truth, which it should be the same for us.
Right.
So you got kind of some key people, and you have the elder, which I feel pretty confident is John, but again, he doesn't reference himself by name. It's church tradition, the way that he writes, the similarity of writing between 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, the Gospel of John, and not so much with Revelation, but Revelation is just a different style of writing as well. So, and those were the ones. Those, by the way, are the books that John wrote. But the interesting thing is he identifies himself in the book of Revelation, but he doesn't in the Gospel of John, 1 John, 2 John, or 3 John. But in Revelation, he calls himself by name. That's just interesting. So, anyway, that's for what it's worth. It's just food for thought. It really doesn't matter who wrote it. It's the inspired word of God. So it's no real need to go debating who wrote John very much, except it's just fun to talk about. Yeah. Probably more fun for theologians than it is for people who read the Bible. But, okay, so you have the elder, and then he's writing to my dear friend Gaius, whom I love in the truth. So the question is, who's Gaius? And where does he come in? And actually, Gaius occurs a couple of times in the text. So we'll kind of look at those and see, like in, like if you go in order of the text, the first time that a Gaius occurs is in Acts chapter 19, verse 29. And it says, soon the whole city was in an uproar. The people seized Gaius and Aristarchus, Paul's traveling companions from Macedonia, and rushed as one man into the theater. So if you think about that and think, oh, he's Paul's traveling companion from Macedonia, if you look at this map, this is the area of Macedonia up here. Now, interestingly, and you don't really see it at this map, is this area right here, that's Achaia, is also, for a while, that was considered to be Macedonia as well.
Okay.
And it would include Corinth, which I think is really important because I think that's where Gaius is from. I think, and I'm going to show you why I think he's from there, but I think Gaius is from Corinth. And the reason is, you look at a couple of other texts, when Paul writes 1 Corinthians, so he's writing to the church at Corinth, right? And he says, I am thankful that I did not baptize any of you except Crispus and Gaius. So if Gaius was a traveling companion from Macedonia, and he baptized someone named Gaius, now, in all of that, there's another Gaius that's mentioned, but I got to look. It was Acts chapter 20, verse 4. It says, he was accompanied by Sopater, the son of Pyrrhus from Berea, Aristarchus, who we just read about, and Secundus from Thessalonica. So, if Aristarchus was also a traveling companion from Macedonia, Thessalonica is in Macedonia, and Gaius from Derbe. Now, that has to be a different Gaius, because, let me get back to my map. Gaius from Derbe, so here's Macedonia and Corinth. Derbe is way over here in Galatia. So I don't think that guy's the same Gaius. I think he's a different one. For whatever that's worth too. So then when you get to the book of Romans, and I didn't pull this up on the screen either. So we got Gaius who is baptized in Corinth. So if we go to Romans 16, and I think it's like verse 23. So when Paul wrote Romans, he wrote from Corinth, I think.
Okay.
And in Corinth, he's writing, so when he writes Romans, he's writing all of these greetings. I, Tertius, who wrote down this letter, greet you in the Lord. So he was amanuensis of Paul. And Gaius, whose hospitality I and the whole church here enjoy, sends you his greetings. Okay. So Gaius is from Macedonia. There's a Gaius who's baptized by Paul in Corinth. And there's a Gaius who the church in Corinth is enjoying his hospitality, which means they're probably meeting in his house.
Probably meeting in Gaius' house.
And when you get back to 1 John, what he is commending Gaius for is his hospitality.
So it's probably the same
So
Gaius.
it seems to be that's the guy.
Right.
So I think Gaius was a Christian from Corinth who opened his home to the church, and as people traveled through that area, he welcomed them, he let them stay in his house, he supported them either with hospitality or financial means that we'll get to in a minute.
Right.
So you have Gaius, so you have the elder, who's John, you have Gaius, who I think was a Christian from Corinth. It makes sense if you look at 1 Corinthians and Romans and Acts, it seems like that's who he was.
Right.
Hey, if y'all got questions, put them in here. Because if I lose you, say, hey, back up and do that again. I didn't lose you in that, did I?
No.
Okay,
Good.
so then you have
No guesses.
then you have Diotrephes, and Diotrephes is there's only let me think. I have to think for a second. So I'm trying to think. I don't think Diotrephes is mentioned anywhere else in. No, Diotrephes is not mentioned anywhere else in the New Testament. So I don't know anything about Diotrephes other than what John writes here. He loves to be first. He'll have nothing to do with us. He is gossiping maliciously about John and his companions. He doesn't welcome anybody, and he puts people out of the church who do want to welcome somebody. So John had even written something to the church, and Diotrephes evidently wouldn't let it be read.
Right.
So then he writes to Gaius.
It's almost like they have two different meeting places, and the other one is this guy's house.
And I've wondered about that.
Because it says, I wrote to the church, but he didn't let it happen, almost like it was sent to him.
Yeah. And so now he's writing to Gaius. So maybe there are two house churches in Corinth. Probably multiple house churches in Corinth. Whoever this guy is, he has a great deal of influence. I mean, it's not good influence, but he still has a great deal of influence because he is able to kick people out of the church who are welcoming the brothers who are traveling. So I don't know if it means he kicks them out of his house church, which I'm assuming is correct. Corinth, your mom and I went to ancient Corinth, and it's it was a fairly large city, and had some really important people in it. So I mean, even the guy. I should have put this up there, but there's an inscription of Erastus, who is like the city manager. He's mentioned in Romans, and so I mean, he was evidently wealthy enough that he was able to pave part of a city street, and so he's a city manager. And you would think somebody with that much power in an ancient city like that would be able to say to this Diotrephes, "Hey, you need to straighten up."
Right.
But evidently, whoever Diotrephes was, he was evidently a very powerful. He may have even been a rich guy. I mean, I don't know. I don't have any idea. Again, there's nothing about him in the text except he doesn't welcome people. He doesn't accept John. He didn't accept John's letter, evidently. He refuses to welcome people, and he can cast them out of the church. So he's pretty important. So then after that, you get Demetrius. And there is another Demetrius in the text. He is, and I thought I pulled this up, but I may not have. He's actually in, I think it's Acts 19. I don't think it's the same Demetrius because it's at the riot. It's at the riot in Ephesus, and see what verse was that? I had to write it down. I think it's verse 24. So a silversmith named Demetrius, who made silver shrines of Artemis, brought in no little business for the craftsmen. So he calls them together, and he's the one that starts the riot, saying, we make a good living from selling idols of Artemis, and we got a pretty good business, and this guy's trying to mess it all up. And then later, and then even Gaius is there, right? The people sees Gaius and Articus, his traveling companion. So that's when that happened. And then later, says if Demetrius and his fellow craftsmen have a grievance, the courts are open and there are proconsuls, they can press charges. So I don't think that's the same Demetrius. I mean, there's no indication that Demetrius ever became a Christian. Now maybe he did, I don't know. But I mean, that's all we know about him, is that he lived in Ephesus and he was a craftsman there. And this is being sent to Corinth. So if it was the same Demetrius, he would have had to become a believer in Jesus and then move from Ephesus to Corinth, which is not impossible.
Right.
But there's no indication that he did it. I mean, and you can have multiple people with the same name in the text, just like a Gaius. I mean, I think you obviously have two. And even Jesus, when he picked apostles, picked some of them that had the same name, right? So I don't think that's the same Demetrius, but this Demetrius, very interestingly, he's well spoken of by everybody. So he's kind of the opposite of Diotrephes.
Right.
So he's well spoken of. And then Gaius is the opposite of Diotrephes because Gaius is welcoming people and being hospitable, and Diotrephes is casting people out of the church who are hospitable. So I just think all of that's interesting for whatever it's worth. But, oh, sorry about that. Wrong button. They got to see our green screen anyway, didn't they? That was kind of cool. So you know how that works. I didn't want to talk about that. I don't know why I left that slide in there. Or that slide in there. And so there was the one from Peter about Peter being a fellow elder. I did that. And I did that. Look, I put all of those in there, but I didn't need them, did I? All right, so key teachings. I put all of those slides in, I guess trying to help me figure out what I was doing. But sorry about, we just skipped right through all of those, but we talked about all of them. So I think there's some key teachings in 3 John that I think are pretty important. One is one's the idea of hospitality.
Right.
So Gaius is commended because as believers came through Corinth, he welcomed them into his house and he supported them. And if you think in that culture as opposed to our culture, when you have traveling ministers and they're going from one town to the next town, I mean, it's not like they can check into Motel 6.
Right.
So one thing you're trying to find is, I mean, hospitality is a very, very important thing because you have people traveling and they need a place to stay. And so Gaius, if we go back to the text, he is, what he's doing, he says, you're faithful to the brothers. And it's kind of interesting that construction, because he's drawing attention to the fact that they are strangers to Gaius. I mean, it's not people that he necessarily knows. They're strangers. And so then these strangers have gone out and told the church at other places about the love that Gaius has because he's welcoming strangers and he wants to send them on their way in a manner that's worthy of God. So they went out, but these traveling preachers, and this word for pagan means someone who's an unbeliever, they don't get any support there. So the only support they get is from people like Gaius, right, who are welcoming them and supporting hospitality. So maybe the first thing is just that concept of hospitality and support of people who preach the gospel. So it makes me think of the verse in 1 Timothy, elders are worthy of double honor, especially those whose job is preaching and teaching. So there were people who traveled around preaching the gospel, or maybe even elders in certain cities who dedicated themselves to teaching and preaching that the church would have supported. And I'm just think that 3 John just talked about how that support's pretty important.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's still, obviously, I still think it's important, right? I get a check from the church, but that's beside the point. I think it's very important that there are people who are, who are dedicated to doing that, and and you might think about that in several different ways. I was trying to think, okay, how would you really, like in our day, how do you show that support? And you might do it by, you might do it by providing a place to stay for some guy who travels from city to city preaching. We don't have as many of those anymore, but we still have them.
You're right.
And I remember like when I was in college, I preached at New Herman Church of Christ, and New Herman Church of Christ is outside of Shelbyville. There were some great people there. And I don't know if anybody ever listening to this knows Harold McGee, but Harold McGee, I still. He was a mechanic, and he went to church there. Ricky and Janet were his daughters. And when he would smash his finger, he would say peaches and cream. So that's what I do now, peaches and cream when you smash your finger. But I think he was a great guy. He rebuilt an engine in my old Mustang, an 06 cylinder one time. But, when I was at New Herman, I mean, somebody fed me every Sunday. Like I drove from Lipscomb down to New Herman. It was about an hour and a half, hour and 45-minute drive. So I would drive down there, teach class, preach. Somebody would feed me. And I would stay all afternoon. Somebody would let me have a nap on a couch or watch a NASCAR race or do something to entertain me. And then I would stay and preach that night, and then I would drive back to Nashville. So that kind of hospitality. I mean, if you can just show somebody that kind of hospitality, like Granny and Grandpa. Like, sometimes they have preachers from the School of Preaching who come and preach there. Well, somebody has to take them home. Doesn't have to, but they get to take them home and feed them. So that kind of hospitality. So you might show somebody some type of hospitality. You might support them. I mean, I think when we generally think about that, we think about supporting people financially.
Right.
And again, that's very important. But it doesn't have to be financial. It could be, you might give them a little encouragement, or you might tell them good job, or you might do something nice for them, or, you might, I don't know, can you come up with any things? I mean, anything that you can do just to kind of that you support them and that you want them to do well. And, and sometimes, and I'm kind of saying this for all preachers, not this one. I mean, sometimes just a kind word, or we appreciate your study, or we appreciate what you're doing. I mean, that always means a lot to people. Sometimes more than even a gift. So, and I'm not telling y'all to do that to me, right? If you're listening to this and you got another preacher somewhere, do that to them. So, you got that, and then I think it's interesting in verse 11 right here. He says, "Do not imitate what is evil, but what is good." And so I think probably the key lessons from 3 John are walk in the truth, support those people who are spreading the gospel in some way, however you can do that, whether it's hospitality or money or encouragement, whatever that might look like. And so you got Diotrephes, who is obviously doing the wrong thing, right? And John says, don't imitate what is evil, but what is good. Right after, so even when you're dealing with Diotrephes, you need to deal with Diotrephes in a way that's good and not evil. I mean, it's like you do good to those who persecute you, you speak kind words to them, and all of those kind of things. So everybody who does good is from God, and the one who does not do, the one who does evil has not seen God. And just like 2 John, he wants to come see them soon face to face, which I think is really interesting because, let me go back to my map. I think this is just interesting. I don't want to draw too much of it. I just think it's interesting. So if John really wrote 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John when he was late in life, like in his 90s, according to church tradition, he lived in Ephesus. So if he sent this letter to Corinth, which I think he did. I think that's where Gaius was, or at least Gaius was originally from Corinth.
Right.
That looks like that would be quite a journey if you were in your 90s. And maybe Gaius is not still in Corinth. Maybe he lives somewhere else. Maybe he relocated. I doubt that he is in Ephesus. You remember we talked about Demetrius, because he was a silversmith in Ephesus, which is where John was living. But I doubt it was Ephesus because
it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to write that letter if they're in your city.
Yeah, and to say, I really want to talk to you face to face. You would have sent them a letter and say, hey, come over and visit with me.
Right.
So I think he probably still is in Corinth, but John just having the wherewithal to think, hey man, I still want to travel to Corinth to see the church. I think he must have been kind of spry. I don't know.
Or do they have something where some of the Corinthians come to Ephesus every so often?
Maybe.
And he's saying, hey, I can't wait for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I have much to write to you, but I do not want to do so with pen and ink. Hope to see you soon. We'll talk to you. Yeah, so maybe, I didn't think about that. That's a good point. Maybe Gaius was going to come to Ephesus where according to church tradition, John lived.
Right. Who knows?
Who knows? But or at least part of that time when he was older, if he wrote Revelation later in life, which I think he did, he was at on the Isle of Patmos at a very old age too. So
he may have been a spry old man.
he may have been
just
very
cutting
spry.
around.
Patmos would have been right here, like right off the coast there. So anyway, I don't want to make too much of that. I mean, one way or the other, I just think it's neat. So I think if you come away from 3 John, you remember practice hospitality, support those who preach the gospel, you imitate good. Don't be a Diotrephes. Be like Demetrius. And it doesn't really say what Demetrius did. It just said he's well spoken of by everyone. So I assume by that he's probably doing the opposite of what Diotrephes is doing.
Right.
I think probably instead of gossiping about John and his companions, he's speaking well of them. He's probably practicing hospitality, and he's probably welcoming people into the church. So, but that's a guess. But I think it's a pretty good one.
He's doing good whatever he's doing.
He's doing good. So you imitate good. You don't imitate evil. You always do good things. All right, so 3 John, not a very long book, and I think we covered everything in 3 John we can possibly cover. So if you got a question, put it in there really quickly before we get off here. Hey, here's all. Oh, wow, really got a green screen thing there.
It's been there. It's just hard to tell.
These are all of the places you can listen online Sunday morning. So ClarksvilleHighwayChurch.com, GospelChariot.church. 2 Facebook pages, Clarksville Highway Church God or Gospel Chariot, and a YouTube channel called Gospel Chariot. I think for the most part, usually the website has the best quality.
Probably.
It is usually pretty much on time. Okay, this is Jeff. Was Gaius a Greek or Jewish? I have no clue. I think I would guess Greek,
but
that's
Greek just by location. But...
Yeah, I would guess Greek, but that is nothing more than just a guess. I'd be very interested, Jeff, if you can still hear this. Why did you ask that question? I mean, there a reason for the question? So, I don't have any idea. And by the time it's going to take him 2 minutes to hear that we ask him a question. So,
I wonder if any of the other ones have asked any.
Yeah, no, I don't have another question. That was the only one, and I don't have any idea if he was Jewish or Greek. I mean, we could look at something really quick and just see. And I don't know if this will give us any information at all.
Etymology of the name.
I was going to look at the etymology of the name of native of Macedonia, traveling companion of Paul. Native of Derbe, prominent believer in Rome. 2 of the Corinthians. That's not really what I was looking for. I was looking for it a different way. We'll do it this way. Bible word study. Well, let me go back to that real quick. Do this. Yeah, I don't really know. That's a question I couldn't answer. I don't know if it is. I was trying to think if it would be more of a Greek name or a Jewish name, and I think it would probably be more of a Greek name, but I'm not really sure. So, don't know. It's a good question. I'll look into it, Jeff, and try to get back with you, but I'm not sure if he was Greek or Hebrew, but I think he was probably a Greek man. All right.
Sounds like a Greek name is what he said.
Oh, sounds like a Greek name. Well, that's kind of what I think. So, we're on the same page, Jeff, so it sounds like a Greek name. We're going to say he was Greek. If I find out different, I'll let you know. All right. Well, cool. Thanks, everybody, for joining in. Join Sunday morning, 9 o'clock for Bible class. We are doing the book of Zechariah. So, tune in for that. I think we're in Zechariah chapter 5. And then Sunday morning worship, we are in the book of Ephesians talking about the church. So, look forward to that. And then next Wednesday night, we'll start the study on good people don't go to heaven. So thanks for joining in. Glad to have you, and hope you have a great evening. And we will see you later.